Good evening and welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. And this evening we have Ngakma Nor'dzin teaching on the subject of Dorje Tsig Dün.
Good evening. I think it's true to say that Dorje Tsig Dün is one of the most important texts in Vajrayana. The practice of Dorje Tsig Dün provides a complete path in itself. Everything you'd need to practice is there. In fact, for some people, they become Dorje Sigpas and Dorje Sigmas. You can just follow this as your path and need do nothing else. It's the invocation of the external Padmasambhava and consequently the invocation of our own beginningless realization. There are many levels on which Dorje Tsig Dün can be understood and could be taught. Tonight I'm mostly restricting myself to the outer level and some of the symbolic meanings of the practice. And I'd like to say a brief word about yogic song. I think this could be an entire teaching in itself, but there are two approaches to yogic song called yang and dunpa. And yang is where the words aren't seen as, the meaning of the words aren't important. So the practice is that of finding the presence of awareness in the dimension of the sound. And dunpa is where the words are important and the melody gives impetus to those words. So when we're talking about the meaning of seven-line song in that sense and the practice in that sense, then we're talking about dunpa. I have a presentation that looks through Dorje Tsig Dün, breaking it down word by word and then bringing it all together again, so you can see how it's constructed. And the presentation includes what it sounds like. You're already familiar with this. The Tibetan text, the transliteration of the Tibetan text, and the word-by-word meaning. And it occurred to me that somebody fluent in Tibetan wouldn't need much of that. This is just for our benefit, because somebody who can actually read the Tibetan has how it sounds and the meaning already present. So this is for our benefit. So yes, we could have a look at the presentation.
So I'm going to share screen again now then.
So I hope you can read this. I didn't think about how big the text needed to be for you, but I hope this is readable. So I'm beginning where Candra Dechen began in her teaching on the subject, which is the structure of Dorje Tsig Dün. So you can see how the lines make up the structure of the practice. We begin with the seed syllable hung, which is the seed syllable of Padmasambhava. I'll say a bit more about that later. Then the object of the prayer. And so this is describing to whom or about whom the practice is dedicated. And so through understanding the qualities of the object of the prayer, then we understand why we are practicing this. So this is the outermost meaning of the practice. So it speaks of where and how Padmasambhava was born and his qualities. Then there's the prayer itself. I suppose I should say monlam rather than prayer, because prayer comes with some Christian connotations, whereas Munlam means wish path. So that not only includes our aspiration in terms of practice, but also the sense of there being a path to making that happen. So we're not just waiting for or begging for something to come externally to us. There's a sense of we're actually going to go out and meet it. So we're actually going to make this practice happen.
Sorry, I just realised that we're not on video. Sorry about that.
Right, thank you. And then so then we have the prayer, the Mon Lam, which is in this case requesting Padmasambhava to give us his blessings. But as I say, we're actually going to meet Padmasambhava rather than just waiting. And then the practice ends with a section from the mantra of Padmasambhava, Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. So that's the overall structure. So if we can scroll down, just bring that, if you bring that to the top of the page, there we are. Again, I apologize for the size of the font here. So we begin with Hum, the seed syllable, which is the invocation of the mind of Padmasambhava, and includes the sense of being the union of emptiness and form, the sense of being the union of Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyo, the sense of being the union of our teachers, the liberation in terms of the 5 elements, and the liberation of the 6 realms. There may be a teaching at some point in terms of the syllable Hum, and it also includes refuge and bodhicitta. So in the syllable Hum itself, you have a complete path of practice as well. Then in the first line proper, Ögyen Yogi Nugchang Sam. So Ögyen and Yul mean the country of Ögyen, and Nugchang is northwest, and Sam means the border. So altogether we have on the northwest border of the country of Ögyen. So Ögyen was the birthplace of Padmasambhava somewhere along the border areas of Afghanistan or Pakistan, somewhere out on the old Silk Road, I think. And it was known at the time as a center of Dzogchen teaching and practice, which is why you have Buddhas in areas that are now largely Muslim areas. There was a great practice of Vajrayana and Dzogchen in those areas. And the way that Rinpoche puts it, it's on the edge of everywhere, but it can't be found on a map. And Ögyen is also an epithet for the nature of mind itself. And this, although present, cannot be found on the map of concept. So in terms of our conceptual thought, we can understand aspects of the nature of mind. We can get quite close to an understanding, but we can never actually find it within the map of concept. The only way of finding the nature of mind is through practice. Sam, as well as meaning border, means juncture. So it's the point instant where we discover the nature of mind. So you can see it as a border because it's the point where 2 things come together. And so suddenly we go from our conceptual understanding to a full understanding of the nature of mind at that point. So Ögyen Yul, this is the place where we find what we previously thought lost. and that is the non-dual state, the innate understanding of the nature of mind. So when we look at these words, we can understand them in terms of a description of the birthplace of Padmasambhava, but also a description of the birthplace of our own primordial awareness, our own primordial realization. And one of the things that I think is really helpful to understand about a practice with this depth is that we can all come together and practice this, and each person can be practicing at in whatever way they understand, in whatever way it is meaningful to them. So practice remains harmonious, while people's realization could be quite different. I think that's very helpful in terms of coming together as a Sangha. Then we move on to the next line, Pema Kesa Dongpo La. And Pema, you'll be familiar with. Pema is lotus. Kesa is the pistil, which I had to look this up, is the female parts of the flower. And then the Dongpo is the stem, and Na is on. So Padmasambhava is born on a fully flowering lotus. So Padmasambhava was found on a lotus on Lake Dhanakosha in the form of an 8-year-old child. Now, the idea of being an 8-year-old child at that point is one where he's able to act with some sense of independence, but still fresh and unpatterned in terms of the view of the world. So the view from that point of view is one where there isn't a sense of sort of conceptual encumbrance. Everything is new and fresh and full of wonder. We spent the day with our grandchildren, and you often find in their eyes that so many things are new and fresh and interesting and haven't become jaundiced by old age and familiarity. Neither of them have reached 8 yet, so that's something to look forward to. But there's certainly that sense of freshness and openness and willingness to explore, but they still need their parents, or in our case, their grandparents. But there's that sense of what the 8-year-old child would be like. The idea of the lotus, and the lotus being in full bloom means that there's nothing else to do. So we're talking about full realization, fully enlightened. This is the symbolism of the lotus at that point. And the lotus grows in muddy, swampy lakes, comes up through all of that muck, and then opens on the surface of the lake, completely pure and pristine. So for us, that's a sense of when realization is attained, it's entirely free of muck, it's entirely free of conceptual baggage. So this is the nature of realization. This is the nature of Padmasambhava. Now, this is the nature of us as well when we gain realization. Yatsen in the next line means marvelous. So Padmasambhava is endowed with marvelous attainments. Again, we're looking at the qualities of full realization. And as I said at the beginning, this is part of the describing the object of the practice. It's strange to refer to Padmasambhava as the object, but this is a description of Padmasambhava and his qualities. Pema Jungne Shesu Drag. Pema, again, lotus, and Jungne, appearing in a lotus. Shesu Drag is renowned, is famous. So this is saying you're endowed with marvelous qualities and you are renowned as the lotus born. Now, in terms of ourselves and our practice and our aspiration, we appreciate these qualities, because without appreciation there can be no aspiration. So we appreciate the qualities of Padmasambhava, and that means that there's the possibility of those qualities manifesting in us. In fact, if they didn't exist in us to some extent, we wouldn't be appreciating them externally. So there's a sense of a conversation there between the external Padmasambhava and the internal Padmasambhava, and we're inciting our internal Padmasambhava through the practice of the external Padmasambhava. So we recognize these qualities. We recognize that Padmasambhava has primordial realization. We are lotus born. We are lotus born as Padmasambhava. We're also lotus born in terms of being born from the lotus of our mothers. So our form has come from the emptiness of our mothers. So this is another aspect of the symbolism, which is quite direct and immediate. Kodu Kandro Mangpo Kor. Padmasambhava is surrounded by many sky dancers, Kandromas, the female sky dancers, Kandropas, the male sky dancers. And these, and including the Pawos and Pamos as well, are our life circumstances. So they're an aspect of Padmasambhava in terms of his radiance and in terms of his retinue. But for us, they appear as our life circumstances. So for a practitioner, every aspect of one's life is one's practice. There isn't a holiday or time off in those terms. There isn't a sense of, well, I did my practice this morning, and this thing that is coming up now is something completely different. It could be in the sense of we welcome anyone at any level of practice to be a practitioner in terms of a church on Sunday practitioner, because we all have to start somewhere. And certainly my experience of practice and life were two different things. And there was a hope that one day one might inform the other. But within this tradition, all our life is practice. So whatever is happening in terms of practice, in terms of our life, are seen as the activities of the Kandros and Pawos. And we are taught through that. We are taught through that in a fairly straightforward, mundane way, in a sense, in that how we react to circumstances tells us exactly who we are, especially when circumstances leap up unexpectedly. If we can prepare for something, that's a bit different, but when something happens that we weren't expecting, that tells us exactly how we are. And for a practitioner, that's really valuable. It can mean, I didn't know I got angry. It could mean, I didn't know I got upset. And then we know that about ourselves. And then circumstances in the future, we might find, I used to get angry with that, or I used to get upset with that. And we know at that point that we learned something that came into our practice and became part of ourselves. So the unexpected circumstances occur, and our reaction today is different to the way it was last year. And we've learned something in the process. So we have the khandras and powers of our life circumstances to thank for that as a possibility. And I'd say we've got ourselves to thank for actually being practitioners and actually making that part of our path of practice and not shying away from what's happening. Where are we now? I think we're at Keiki Jesu Dagdruki. So this is where we're entering the Monlam prayer itself. We aspire to be like Padmasambhava, or to put it another way, following these teachings and practices, we accomplish the state of Padmasambhava in terms of where these practices lead. So, Jingilobji Sheksusol, Jingilob is blessings, and the Sheksusol is a request for blessings. So externally, it's requesting the blessings of Padmasambhava upon our minds. We pray that our minds become inseparable from Padmasambhava, so that Padmasambhava is always present in terms of our minds. Prayer, as I said before, Monlam's a better word. Through our practice, over time, we gain confidence in our practice and in the efficacy of our practice. So this goes beyond being a prayer in terms of hoping that good things will happen to us. It's a prayer that's made of confidence, aspiration, and willingness to follow that path of practice until we gain the results. So we have confidence in the path, confidence in the teachers, confidence in Padmasambhava, and confidence in ourselves as well, especially if we're already in a position to have seen some change in terms of how we are. Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. This comes from the mantra of Padmasambhava, and in this case, Guru is Lama, Pema is Padmasambhava. So Guru Pema is the lotus-born Guru, Padmasambhava, but can also be seen in terms of our own Lama. Siddhi is power or attainment, and Hum in this case can be read as bestow. We don't usually translate mantric syllables, but in this case, to make a sentence, Guru Pema Siddhi Hum can be read as Guru Pema bestow siddhis, give us blessings, like that. So that was a fairly fast gallop, really, through the practice. If you scroll up to the next section. So what we're looking at here is, once again, we're looking at the structure of Dorje Tsig Dün, but this time in terms of an inner meaning of the practice, so that when we're looking at the words of the practice, we can understand Ögyen Yogi Nubchang Tham as being Ögyen, the origin of Tantra, the origin of Dzogchen, and our own beginningless, self-luminous mind. Ögyen also means going by flying, which is a description of Vajrayana as being a quick path to enlightenment. Pema Kesa Dongpo La. So when we realize our own beginningless nature, we realize it as it's always been there. And it's pristine in terms of there's no stain and there's no carryover of any previous conceptual luggage. Yatsen Chogi no Drupnye. We manifest accomplishments in the way that Padmasambhava manifests accomplishments. We have that capacity, and as Rinpoche put it, we inhibit ourselves. So sometimes it's hard to believe that we have that capacity, but hopefully we also have some confidence that we'll understand that, and that our capacity and that of Padmasambhava will actually have the same realization. The state of realization itself is famous and renowned. So it's not just Padmasambhava, it's also talking about the state of realization, the state of enlightenment. And Kordu Kandra Mangpo Kor, we are self-taught in our experience of the world. I think this is most important, that teachings come to us through our experience of our life in the world. And this is certainly part of the aspect of being the householder lineage. We're not attempting to calm life down or settle things down or turn away from aspects of life that may be difficult or distasteful. It's all part of our practice. And as I said before, the unexpected nature of what happens in life, we can't predict what's going to happen today or tomorrow. And that tells us something about who we are and what the results of our practice might be. And then our prayer of aspiration is in terms of ourselves and our own realization here, that our practice will connect us with the realization of Padmasambhava. As I said before, we're not just expecting Padmasambhava to do all the work. We are going out through our practice and meeting with that realization. Jingyi Lobshi Sheksu so then we have gained the blessing of Padmasambhava, and Guru Pema Siddhi Hum, we become the lotus-born Guru. So there's at the beginning and end of this teaching two approaches to Dorje Tsig Dün. One in terms of the outer meaning with some of the symbolism, and one in terms of the inner meaning or an inner meaning of Dorje Tsig Dün. So these are the words of the practice, and if you practice in terms of Dunpa, then you can understand these words, and they can be meaningful for you. Thank you.
I think it's such an important practice to become familiar with. There have been so many occasions when we've been in Nepal and also in Bhutan, that practice was the only common thing we had in terms of communication. And I've had people come up to me who are clearly practitioners, and they just say Dorje Tsig Dün to you. Yeah. And that is the communication. It's a sign that you've been recognized as a practitioner. And yes, it's like saying, yes, we share this. we share this communication, this understanding.
And this devotion to the path of practice. And sometimes we've been invited to a talk practice with a Lama, and they may speak no English. We certainly speak very little Tibetan, but we have this in common, and we could be sitting there in practice, and at some point, Dorje Tsig Dün is practicing. I know this,
and you can join in.
This is home. This is where I live.
Yeah.
And it's a most wonderful experience.
And when we went, we were very lucky while we were staying at a monastery in Bhutan, the whole group of us, that they gave a performance of dance of the Tibetan words, Chang. And while in between times, like they were waiting for people to change the dancers to change costumes, and before the performance started, the assembly of monastics chanted Dorje Tsig Dün over and over again, incredibly fast, to a rhythm. And it took us all a little while to sort of tune our ears into it because it was so fast. But eventually we were able to join in with them, and they were quite so obviously delighted that we were able to join in, and it meant something to us.
That was a most moving experience, because we'd been to places, even in Bhutan, where a proportion of the audience were tourists rather than practitioners. And we were most fortunate to have this experience of Cham, where it was the dancers and their fellow monastics or their fellow practitioners and us. And as Ngakpa said, the sense of having that commonality of practice in that particular Gompa was most wonderful and moving.
I thought it was also interesting you saying that a person whose language is Tibetan or who knows Churke, the Dharma language, like the Bhutanese, don't call it Tibetan because they're Bhutanese. Why would they call it Tibetan? So Churke is the term meaning the language of Dharma. And I think I can see advantages on both sides. So we have the advantage that maybe it's easier for us to practice this as yang and let go of the meaning, because I have to concentrate quite hard to stay with the actual meaning of the words as I practice it. But I can enter the dimension of the tunes, the Vajra melodies. Whereas if I was singing it in my own language, then the meaning of the words are always there. So I think I could see it could go either way.
I've not thought of that. No, it's like going to a Latin mass when you don't really understand the Latin, but you really get carried along with the sound of it.
Yeah.
I've not thought of that as a possibility.
We'll have to ask Sona.
Yes, indeed.